I'll be honest, when it comes to home office or small business power protection, I've seen a lot of people get burned by cheap, no-name UPS units that promise 5 minutes of backup and then shut down the moment the power flickers. Those disappointments are why I hesitated before buying anything in the 1500 VA range, and why I spent a couple of evenings scrolling through forums, watching unboxing videos, and reading the handful of reviews that actually talk about day-to-day performance. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The question I kept asking myself was simple: does this Vertiv Edge 1500 VA feel like a smarter buy, or am I just swapping one gamble for another? First off, let's talk about the problem this UPS is trying to solve. Most of us run a mix of desktop PCs, a couple of monitors, maybe a network switch, and for some, a modest NAS or a small server rack. When the grid hiccups, you either lose unsaved work, risk corrupting a database, or if you're a content creator, watch a render get killed midway. The cheap alternatives I've tried usually have two issues: they either give you a very short runtime on battery, or they switch to a simulated sine wave that can make sensitive gear behave oddly. The Vertiv Edge 1500IRT2UXL positions itself as a line interactive UPS with true sine wave output, a rotatable LCD and 3 programmable outlets. That sounds promising, but the real test is whether those features translate into usable time and stability when the lights go out. I started by putting the unit in a typical small office setup: a 2022 i7 desktop, a 27-inch 144Hz monitor, a router, and a Synology DS220 Plus NAS with a couple of drives spinning. I plugged the desktop and monitor into the 2 battery-backed outlets, left the router on a Surgeonly outlet, and kept the NAS on the 3rd programmable outlet, set to shut down after 10 minutes of power loss. Within a few minutes of the UPS being on the shelf, the LCD was already showing the load percentage about 38% at idle and the estimated runtime for the current load, which was roughly 14 minutes. That's a solid figure for a 1500 VA unit, and it matched the runtime curve I saw on the manufacturer's spec sheet without any surprises. What matters in a real-world scenario is how the UPS handles a sudden outage. The line interactive design uses an automatic voltage regulator, AVR, that smooths out brownouts before the battery even needs to kick in. During a simulated brownout, I watched the LCD dip the voltage, and the UPS kept feeding the PC and monitor without a hiccup. Once the power was completely cut, the unit switched to battery in under a second, fast enough that my Windows machine didn't log an unexpected shutdown. The sine wave output on battery is another practical win. My NAS reported clean power and didn't go into a protective read-only mode, something I've seen happen with cheaper units that only output a stepped approximation of a sine wave. Now, who should actually consider this UPS? If you run a single workstation with a monitor and maybe a router, you could probably get away with a cheaper 800 VA model. The Edge 1500 shines when you have multiple devices that need clean power for a decent window of time. Think a small server, a creative workstation, or a home lab. The 3 programmable outlets let you decide which gear should stay on long enough to finish a job and which can safely shut down early, which is a big convenience for people who don't want to manually power off devices during an outage. On the flip side, there are buyers who should skip it. If you're looking for a portable UPS that you can slide under a desk or carry to a co-working space, the 2U rack mount form factor and the 65-pound weight make it more of a stationary installation. It's also not the best fit for ultra-high-density server racks where space is at a premium. The unit occupies a full 2U slot and needs clearance for the rotatable LCD. Finally, if you need an extremely long runtime, say, to keep a server alive for an hour or more, you'll still need to add external battery packs, which the Edge model doesn't natively support. Talking about strengths, the first thing I noticed is the LCD. Unlike many UPS units that hide critical information behind tiny LEDs, this screen rotates, so you can view it whether the unit is mounted horizontally in a rack or standing vertically on a shelf. It displays load, battery charge, estimated runtime, and even alerts for overloads. The alerts actually saved me a couple of times. When I added a second monitor, the load spiked to 62% and the UPS beeped, prompting me to rearrange the outlets so the most critical gear stayed on battery. The AVR is another practical win. I live in an older building with frequent voltage sags, and the UPS kept my equipment humming smoothly without constantly dipping into battery. Weaknesses are more subtle but worth mentioning. The unit has a single IECC13 input, which is standard, but the cable is relatively short, just 3 feet, so you'll need to